Alright, hello everyone. My state of California was one of the 7 states that just had a primary election the other night, and California's primary system, as I explained in other prior election videos, that most states is that it has a jungle primary where candidates from all eligible parties compete in the same primary, and the top 2 candidates, regardless of party, advance to the general election. So I'm going to focus on, the rates that are statewide as well as ones in North San Diego County, because, these are the ones where I live, essentially, and eligible to vote in. I'm also going to do a separate video about Chesa Boudin getting recalled in San Francisco, so stay tuned for that, because that was quite the major white pill moment. For the San Diego County Sheriff's race, first, let's start off with that. It looks like Kellyanne Martinez, who's the current undersheriff, placed first with 38.9% of the vote, and John Hemmerling took second with 20.42% of the vote, making them the candidates who will advance to the general election this November. Now, I'm not in love with Hemmerling as a candidate, but unlike Kellyanne Martinez, he doesn't seem to be a gun grabber. Now, the main issue in this race is disturbing event we've had the last few years in San Diego County jails, where inmates have just mysteriously died. This problem is probably likely led to former Sheriff Bill Gore, who's one of the worst sheriffs in San Diego County history, to retire before finishing up his term, leaving Anthony Ray as interim sheriff ever since. And must be nice to avoid accountability by retiring before anything can happen to you. Now, both have promised to reform the county jail system, but Kellyanne Martinez, as undersheriff, likely bears some of the responsibility for these inmate deaths, and I hope Hemmerling's prior experience running a prison in Iraq when he was in the military is as helpful as he claims. Now, as for the county judge races, Penny McLaughlin is running unopposed for Office 32, so not much to be said there, and, well, not much information on her in general either, so I hope she's not some partisan wacko like some of these people are. Now, for Office 35, it looks like Mike Fleming and Rebecca Cantor will go on to the general election with 40.31% and 37.84% respectively, which isn't good because they're both far-left ideologues. Fleming's basically endorsed by La Raza, which is like the Latino BLM, which I don't mean as a compliment, and my soon-to-be former state assembly member, because of redistricting, Tasha Boehner Horvath, who is one of Newsom Malini's cronies, is also endorsed this loser. Cantor is also being endorsed by Horvath as well as San Diego County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, who's easily the worst of the supervisors, along with his wife, former Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez, who's your typical branch COVIDians who virtual signal about how COVID's going to kill us all if we don't get a bajillion shots, and wear masks in public for the rest of eternity. And, of course, Todd Gloria, Mayor Todd Gloria of San Diego, who's another Newsom Malini stool pigeon. And now Mike Murphy may not be perfect, but slightly more sane. But this is going to be one of those races where I write in Mickey Mouse. I'm kind of hoping he would have gotten the top 2, but it didn't work out that way. Now, Judge Office 36 is an interesting one. Pete Murray, who didn't give much information on a specific policy, has a clear 38.94%, meaning he's going to go to the general election. Peter Singer and Chris Lawson are neck and neck with 30.99 and 30.07% each, which means either of them could advance to the general election. Singer is endorsed by the San Diego County Democratic Party, which is an instant no thank you, and Lawson's endorsed by Todd Gloria, also a no thank you. Now, for the governor's race, results are, as much as I hate to admit, I knew this would be the case. Newsom Malini has a quite sizable lead at 52.88%. Second place finisher is also unfortunate, as instead of having a somewhat fair nomination battle, State Senator Brian Dahl and his wife, who's an assembly member's scheme of bribing the California State GOP to officially endorse him before the primary worked, and he got 22.46% of the vote, meaning the general election will be 2 corrupt egomaniacs that had no business anywhere near the levers of power. Now, I knew Daniel R. Mercury was a long shot candidate, but I had to vote my conscience, and there's a good chance I'll write in his name in the general election because I can't in good conscience vote for either of them. Now, for Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Koulounakis, who's another Mussolini crony, also has a comfortable lead at 51.01% of the vote, and Angela Underwood Jacobs, 27.62% of the vote. Jacobs doesn't offer many policy specifics aside from talking points, but if her talking points are to be believed, she's definitely better than Koulounakis. Lieutenant Governor doesn't have that much power, but is often a stepping stone to governor. Mussolini, for example, served as lieutenant governor before he became governor, and before that he was mayor of San Francisco, which is lovely this time of year. It's totally not like Skid Row and Sodom and Gomorrah had a deformed crack baby. I promise it's great, it's fantastic. Leftists didn't turn a once nice city into the world's largest public toilet. But I suppose that's enough of me being a smartass for now. The top two for Secretary of State, which is the official in charge of state elections, is Shirley Weber with 56.21% and Rob Bernosky with 26.85%. Weber oversaw some of the most blatant, let's say, shenanigans for algorithmic purposes in California state history. You can't honestly tell me with a straight face that Mussolini, as unpopular as he is, somehow managed to avoid recall in such a massive landslide. Now, I could see him barely squeaking by being believable, but you can't ignore all the reports of registered Republicans being turned away from the polls when they tried to vote in person because they allegedly already voted. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, if a Republican did that, it would rightfully be considered corruption and voter suppression. So I think it's rather obvious I'm not voting for the crook Weber. Now, I hope Bernosky makes good on his promise of fairer elections in the event he gets elected. We're just going to have to turn out in larger numbers because, you know, Weber will secure the dead people vote by a significant margin. And we got to pump up those rookie numbers because the turnout for this primary was pretty pathetic. Anyway, I'm pleasantly surprised to see that the candidate I voted for controller won by such a convincing margin, Lonnie Chen, 41.57%. And of course, the second place finisher is Malia M. Cohen at 20.22%. Hope Chen is serious in fighting corruption, as if he doesn't end up shooting himself in the and that if he does it, he doesn't end up shooting himself in the chest while trying to hang himself like a certain Clinton associate allegedly did, as we recently found out, wink, wink. And Cohen's stated policies at the same time did pull nonsense that's turning California into a banana republic, so no thanks to Cohen. But speaking of no thank you, Fiona Ma, another incumbent, is going to be going to the general election for treasurer at 55.06% because we just know that finances in the state are just doing great. Spoiler alert for another video, you may have a surplus, but yeah, well, considering how much people are being taxed and the middle class is being wiped out, I don't think it's something to be proud of. Anyway, and Andrew Doe gets second place at 24.69%. Now, I was hoping for Jack Guerrero would have made it to the general. Is Andrew Doe's more like an Arnold candidate, which is not what I'm looking for either. So for now, I'm kind of undecided. I'm not voting for Ma, but not sure I want Doe either. But he hasn't done anything that's egregious enough for me to just go a definite no. So let me just put it to you that way. The Attorney General's race, Rob Bonta, the incumbent, is advancing to the general election with 51.41%, which, again, surprised to no one. Mussolini takes real good care of his cronies, and Rob Bonta is his biggest one. I originally supported independent candidate Anne-Marie Schubert, but dropped her like a hot potato once I found out that she wants to go after ghost guns and other quote-unquote illegal guns. So then I supported Eric Early. Unfortunately, Nathan Hochman got second at 27.4%. Hochman probably would still be better than Bonta, but he wants to continue the drug war by promising to get fentanyl off the streets. Good luck with that, buddy. Countless other politicians have promised to do the same thing with crack, meth, and, well, you name the drug, and they failed to get it off the streets. Now, they've done everything except for doing the one thing that'll work and actually, ending the drug war. This will probably be another one where I vote for someone ridiculous like, I don't know, Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. Now, there's also insurance commissioner, but to be honest with you, I can't even pretend to give a crap about it. Richard Lara and Greg Conlon advanced the general election, 36.32% and 22.51% respectively. Now, this is one agency that, to be honest with you, I'm questioning if it should even exist, or, how much power does it really have. But I'm one of those pesky libertarians that kind of just wants to leave you alone. So maybe that particular bias is seeping in with the apathy regarding that particular race. Now, the disappointments, of course, don't stop there. For Senate, this race is a bit strange because Newsom-Leaney decided to violate the 17th Amendment by appointing Alex Padilla to the Senate after cackling Kamala Harris vacated the seat after she was elected vice president. Yes, Newsom-Leaney was allowed to do this, technically, but he conveniently forgot about the stipulation of this only being until a special election can be called, and said special election not being called until 2 years later, when the unfinished term is almost expired after Newsom-Leaney got called out on it. Now, so there are 2 Senate elections on the ballot, one being filled the remainder of the term. Padilla won that rather handedly. So, since there's so little time left, I just can't pretend to give a crap about it. But I do give a crap about the second, which is whether or not Padilla will be elected in his own right for the term beginning in 2023. The actual full term. Now, Padilla's going to the general election with 49.3%, while second-place challenger Mark Muser got 18.96%. Needless to say, I'm not voting for Newsom-Leaney crony Alex Padilla, though I don't like the fact that Muser doesn't go into policy specifics. I highly respect him, though, for his work as a lawyer fighting against Newsom-Leaney's unconstitutional edicts, so I'm leaning towards giving Muser a shot. But if I hear anything like gun grabbing or warmongering, I'm voting for Mickey Mouse for this one as well. Now, in my congressional district, the California 49th, it's going to be a rematch from the 2020 election between Mike Levin, who got, 53.24% of the vote in the primary, and Brian Marriott, who got 19.15% of the vote in the primary. Now, as I stated in my prior video, both of these candidates are terrible. This district was a Democratic gain in 2018 when Darrell Issa decided to bail on his district and run in the California 50th instead of due to him being afraid he'd lose re-election. Now, a bunch of leftists were protesting at his district office and everything, and, I think healthcare was one of the main issues, but there were some others as well. But Issa wasn't great and still isn't, but Levin wasn't exactly an improvement with him voting in lockstep with Sleepy Joe, who has the dishonor of dethroning Woodrow Wilson as the worst president in American history. Now, as I explained in the last video, Marriott's a warmonger that's gung-ho about starting World War III by escalating our involvement in the Ukrainian fiasco. I'm sure getting nuked will be lots of fun, Maybe if I survive, I'll grow another eye or some tentacles from the radiation. Well, who knows? I might grow another penis or another pair of arms. That might be fun. Anyway, it'll be like a live reenactment of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which will be just swell. I think we're going to write my own name in on this one and not Mickey Mouse, just to show the fact that I'm not messing around here. Now, my state Senate District 38 is pretty much went the way I was expecting, which is, by the way, the district I myself tried to run in as a candidate, but could get enough signatures on time to make the primary ballot. I wasn't ready to run yet. I have to admit that. But, when the next time comes, I'll be much better prepared. Canvassing's a lot harder than I thought. Anyway, Catherine Blakespear is advancing with 48.17%, and Matt Gunderson is advancing with 41.87%. I would have preferred if Kerr had been the Democrat in the race, because even though he's a horrible candidate due to being a huge branch COVIDian, because he's a retired firefighter and thus an old man, there really isn't much further damage he could do outside of however much time he could spend in the state Senate. If he won, assuming he won the general election, of course. But Blakespear, on the other hand, is dangerous because I believe she's around 42 years old, if I remember correctly, which isn't all that much older than me at 36 years old, for the record. This means that Blakespear could potentially use this office as a stepping stone to higher office like governor or potentially United States senator. Wouldn't be surprised if they were grooming her to replace Dianne Feinstein, who's pretty much on her deathbed and could croak any day now. With all the establishment backing and youth, this makes Blake Spear very, very, very dangerous. Potentially one of the most dangerous candidates long-term of any of the ones in this race. Now, I don't have as much information on Gunderson as I would like, but he's a bit older and probably won't have as much ability to fail upward, so I'm voting for him to keep Blake Spear out, mostly. Before redistricting, back when this was called District 36, this was a district that leaned slightly Republican, but now leans slightly Democrat, which does place this race more in Blake Spear's favor than it would have before, but not completely insurmountably so, because, you know, this year is really shaping up to be a bad year for Democrats. You know, considering all the inflation and general incompetence of the president and just other factors, you know. But the 74th Assembly District is my state assembly district. Also came out like I expected. You know, there were only 2 candidates in the primary, so it was a dress rehearsal for the general. So we already knew who they were going to be. It was close. You know, Chris Duncan got 51.16% and Lori Davies got 48.84%. General election is going to be squeaker and go to either of them, but this is another election where I'm not in love with either candidate, but, you know, Davies is potentially acceptable, though not fantastic. You know, I did vote for her as lesser evil candidate for the primary, but that was partially because we already knew who the 2 candidates would be, and so that election didn't really matter much. But I'm not sure if I'm going to do the same for the general election. I'm going to need more time to think about that one. But so lastly, to my strong disappointment, Tony K. Thurmond, who oversaw school lockdowns and masking as the incumbent of the state superintendent race, will go on to the general election with 41.34%. My chosen candidate, Lance Ray Christensen, will also advance with 16.92%. So, kind of hoping he does better in the general, but I'm thinking that Thurmond is probably going to get another term. But overall, most of this news is disappointing to me, but not surprising. But the biggest bit of disappointment, not surprising news, is, again, I mentioned this earlier, the pathetic turnout. Primaries tend to have low turnout rates, but they often can be even more important than the general election, because you can sometimes have even more of a choice in primary elections, particularly in open primary states like California, than the general election. And I think Congressman Thomas Massey put it best when he said, primary elections are where you get to choose people, and the general elections where you choose the party. Now, that's less the case in California because of the way the primary system works here. But generally, in a lot of cases, you know, that statement kind of rings true. So, you know, when we have low turnout like this, it kind of makes it easier for shenanigans to occur and for them to, you know, get away with shenanigans. So I think the turnout was like 20-something%. Again, pathetically low. I would rather prefer it be a bit closer to 70 or 80%. But really, a lot of that goes down to the fact that we need to be more civically engaged and need to pay attention, even though the system isn't exactly great. Actually, the system not being great is more reason to be involved, because, you know, we got to put up some kind of a fight here. Otherwise, we really are doomed. The black pillars are right, but, well, anyway, this is going to be the last video on the election for probably elections for quite a while. So, anyway, until next time, I'll see you in a bit.